Also, we have I have another announcement. We will have the BKNIX 48 meeting in Chiang Mai, Thailand, in September 5th to 12th this year. So please save the date and see us at the BKNIX 48 in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And let's move on to the fourth session. In this session, 5G driven mechanism. The talk will be given by Dr. Jesada Sivaraks. He was in the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission of Thailand as a secretary to the vice chairman. He also has many experiences in fields of telecommunications, including telecommunication planning and related system analysis and mobile spectrum management. Currently, he is the head of government and industry relations at Ericsson and also the committee member of BKNIX Foundation. Please welcome Dr. Jesada Sivaraks.
Hello, good afternoon for everyone. Today, the session that I will take care is about to talk like a landscape for 5G. Now, many people just talk about 5G, 5G, what is a 5G? I need to use only 30 minutes to talk, to brief about the 5G, how we can prevent the 5G, why we have to go to 5G. First of all, before I talk to the 5G, I have to talk about mobile landscape in Thailand. This is data from my company. You can see that up until today, they have a lot of change in the mobile landscape in Thailand or anywhere in the world. Now, mobile network operator, they found that they got a demand increase every year. We expect that every year the data traffic it grows around 45%. So the data is growth, but the point revenue cannot increase. You can see that when they have to double traffic every year, but they cannot increase the price rate. In the mobile landscape, the mobile operator, they start losing the big revenue during the coming of the OTT player. Because the OTT can provide some telecom-like service. First, in the past, many people have to pay for the roaming, very expensive roaming. Right now, not many people pay for the roaming. You can use OTT for free. You can use to share your voice, data, video with your friend and family when you're going abroad with the free of charge. It's good. Good for you, not good for mobile operator. The second one, the second big revenue that they have started to lose is about SMS. Now you have a lot of choice to use it. Use multimedia service, messaging service for free. We not charge with the SMS. Now, the threat, very big threat to the mobile operator is about voice. Voice revenue. With the OTT, they can provide the voice quality is almost the same as the mobile operator and free of charge. So, business is changing. Mobile operators have to think how they can change because they cannot ask to go back in the old day anymore. I can say that the mobile network market, the mobile market, in the past is only B2C, business to customer. Just mobile operator roll out the network. the customer, like organization or customer, enterprise customer, individual customer, just buy service. That's all. They make a lot of money like this in the past. But from today, go to the future, they cannot do it the same thing. Mobile, if they did not change to find the new revenue, they did not change the new business model, they go to a commodity market. Customer need only data service. Now you can notice that many people start to select the mobile operator from the data package only. You pay 300 baht, how maximum of the gigabyte that you get. Now people start to compare this one. And you can count that more and more people will be changed because of the cost per gigabyte. You pay the same, you get the big chunk of the data service every month. That is the comparing. When you see that in the mobile network infrastructure, you can see the big point of traffic is video. Voice is very small. Now, the turning point is up to some mobile operator in other countries. They propose voice for free in your lifetime. This thing happened in India. Jio is the first mobile operator that proposed voice for free, because they realized that the big portion of the traffic in their network is not come from voice, it come from video. Reliance Jio is a new operator, is a mobile number 4 in India. The market plan that they come to the market, they propose free voice for your lifetime. That's why they got a big portion of the market share in the first year. The existing one, the small operator existing one, is gone in the first year that Jio is come. Mobile operator number 3 and number 4 have to merge together. If they did not merge together, they cannot survive. So this is a picture. Mobile network operator, now they have to realize their own network can support only data and data. I think this thing will be happen soon when the mobile operator, they can realize that audio, the voice equipment, no people use. Why they did not let the people use for free in soon. This thing will become more and more. Now you can notice that I have a chance to talk with a taxi driver. He said to me he paid 20 baht per day. They can use line with unlimited. They can talk to his friend and family via the line call, the OTT call for free. The behavior changed. And you can see in this graph, 2G. In the Q3 of this year, they gone. GSM is gone already. Next, we will have a 3G, 4G. But in the near future, 3G will be small and small portion. 4G will be a longer existing network. In Thailand, I think around 80%, 90% in the next 5 years, traffic will be on 4G. We are not growing fast to 5G like in North Asia, China, Japan, Korea, or in US or in North America. In South Asia Pacific, 5G will be start in the next couple of years. We have a struggle on the spectrum, especially for the spectrum price is a one big barrier for us. And for Thailand right now, you can see that 75% we have a smartphone adoption already. So by this slide, we can see network mobile will be support majority for the data. Voice is something small. Technology that support voice-centric will be gone. 2G, 3G will be gone. Data-centric will be 4G, 5G. This one I try to wrap up something about the EBITDA, about the margin. That is, we have to check the money in operator, because I am a supplier. I have to say what is a wealthy, healthy in their pocket. We found that even though EBITDA from the big three operator is look quite high, but the net profit is not like that. Some operator, they have started to get lost this year. And some, they got, even though they got a bigger, but it's very small, bigger. The incumbent, the biggest operator in Thailand that have a 44-45 market share, you can see that the margin is 17%. And it will be less and less every year. Number 3 is true, because the data I cannot separate between fixed line and mobile, because true they did not separate this one. But the thing that I see the positive is the blending is not separate only mobile. But from my expectation, I think mobile revenue is not quite well. Mobile profit and mobile margin is not quite well. Somebody say is in a couple of years there will be less than 10%. That is the landscape for the mobile. When I talk about the 4G, if we need to compare, because the broadband is one fundamental infrastructure that will be effect to the digital service. If we did not have a good quality of the broadband network, we cannot set up the startup to make a new digital service over there. And when I try to collect the information to see in the 2 dimensions between country around this region, 1 dimension is talk about the availability, is internet layer, coverage. Thailand is one of the top country in this region that we have a good coverage area. People can access to 4G in many places. This one is say 85.5%. But, I say but, when we see the speed, Thailand have one of the lowest 4G speed in this region. I collect from many sources. Some sources they say you can use a 4G speed in Bangkok, but the speed is less than in Myanmar and Ho Chi Minh City. We can have good in coverage, but we have no good in the speed bandwidth. I can say that the availability for 4G, we are good, but we have a good quality. We have a bad quality, not good quality. Very bad quality on the 4G. Something that I try to make assumption on this one, why this thing happened. We found that number of spectrum. We are the one of the country that released the spectrum to the market very minimized. We have only 350 megahertz When you compare with Malaysia, is 500, 600. Singapore is 600. The best country around this area is Australia. They have released the spectrum at least 900 megahertz already. So if we talk about the broadband, the country like us, we need a wireless broadband. But the fundamental resource is the spectrum. We cannot release the spectrum to the market. That's why we have the lowest quality 4G downlink quality in this region. You can see that every day people buy the new smartphone. Every day people have more devices to connect to the mobile network. Every day people use the application is eating more data traffic. But we still have the same resource. That's the key issue. Don't talk before 5G, now 4G, how we can improve. Next slide. I try to convince you that the one of the reason why mobile operator have to go to 5G. I mentioned that cost per gigabyte will be the key issue. The cost per gigabyte, because people, the customer, need to take more and more data, but to have not pay more the price. This year, you pay 300 baht, you get 40 gigabyte per month. Next year, if you got 80 gigabyte, they need to stay to pay it the same price like this. This is the demand, this is the market like that. So operator did not have choice, another choice. They have to, how they can lower the cost per gigabyte. As you see in this picture, you can see that when we have the 5G can minimize the cost per gigabyte for 1 of 10. That is the key issue. But before to go the 5G, we have to go to expansion to use the current spectrum efficiency first before we go to the 5G. But the 5G in soon, we cannot avoid that because the demand of the market is like that. People need more spectrum, more bandwidth, pay less. That is. In 5G, there are many use cases. First one that we think Thailand will go to the 5G with this reason is enhanced mobile broadband. Because people need more and more data and need more and more speed. So mobile operator have to go with the enhanced mobile broadband for the first one. And after that, with the enhanced mobile broadband, the operator can provide the service with the less cost. When they make a cost per gigabyte closely to the fixed line by the fiber, they will use the 5G as a fixed wireless service to replace the fiber and replace the Wi-Fi. Because one mobile operator, they use one network to provide service, both mobile and fixed line service. So the second market from the 5G will be moving is go to the fixed wireless access, especially in Thailand, that we have an urbanization area and rural area. The area in Thailand, we have urbanization only 17,000 square kilometers. 1/3 of the people live in this area. But 2/3 of the people live in 250,000 square kilometers. In urbanization area, you have a lot of choice to use a broadband with very cheap price. But people in the rural area, they have no choice. They cannot use a they cannot use the fiber to the home because nobody provide the service to them. So if you have to find one technology that can provide something as a fiber, pay the flat rate, you can use the traffic as much as you need. It will go to that. Fixed wireless access will be happen in the country like this. In this region, many countries have the same situation like Thailand will be happening. It's the second market. And with the 5G network, the mobile operator will be find the new revenue stream that we call IoT market or machine communication market. Because the sensor of network that now today we have started to talk about the IoT for both cellular IoT and non-cellular IoT. And another side of the IoT we call the critical IoT. The critical IoT is something is not only the sensor network like a massive IoT. The critical IoT is something like in manufacturing, in the healthcare service. Many people talk to me that why we need 5G. Because they say with the speed, we can do on 4G. One thing that we say the 5G and 4G, the difference is not only the speed. The difference is about the latency. When we talk latency, what is a latency? For easy understanding, you can see, you have an experience to see the clip video on the network. When you see the sound and the picture of the mouth, is not harmonizing, it's not synchronized. Sometimes this picture is moving before the sound is coming. What is this mean? People to talk is about the autonomous car. The autonomous car have a IoT, the sensor around the car. When the people jump in the street, the autonomous car just detects the people in the street. They have to send information back to the center and make the brake, apply the brake. Can you imagine? Are you trust the network that picture of the mouth is not synchronous with the voice? It means that the distance to apply the brake 4G maybe take 6 or 7 meters, so that we cannot do it in the reality. That is one. So this is the full opportunity of the 5G that we will show why mobile operators have to go to 5G. Next, 5G is not as a mobile communication for people anymore. The 5G is not B2C market. Now the market is changed to B2B2C. Business to business and to the customer. It's not only that mobile operator lay out the network and let the customer come to buy the service. Now they have to find the platform provider. Now they have to find the new service creativity provider to use their network to apply the new service in each sector. From the report, they have the 10 important sectors that will get the benefit to use the 5G. We can see that manufacturing. Because the robot is the new machine in the manufacturing, and the robot need to connect. Because in the past, we have a machine is a big type of the machine in the factory. And you can see the big type machine in the factory, they have to lay out to wiring. They cannot move. But in the new type of the factory, they use a robot. Every robot they have a leg, 1 leg, 2 leg, 3 leg. Machine can moving around the floor. When the machine moving, you cannot connect with the wire. You have to connect with the wireless. That's why we can say that manufacturing will get the benefit of the 5G. And in this picture, you can see that in the year of 2026, the revenue, the big chunk of every revenue will be coming from the old model is B2C. But for the new model B2B2X will be increased. And they have a 2 type of the new player, platform provider and new service creativity provider. Now, in my company, they have a survey to see why the industry, the enterprise in 10 major sectors need a 5G. Why they see the benefit of this one. They have a survey for 100 companies in each sector. And each company have at least 1,000 employees. Make sure it's a big company. And they ask for the C-level. What do you see in the 5G? And we have the conclusion. For the one they have to see like efficiency and the new creativity value of the program is the majority. But they see in the picture of the both industry not start in their own company. They see that this one supposed to happen and the changing of the sector for the whole sector first. So the mechanism to drive the 5G now we have to drive in sector by sector. And we expect that the first 2 sectors that will be need to use the 5G is manufacturing, public safety, and energy. Is the one to need to get the benefit of the 5G. So I think that is all brief about the 5G, a little bit of this one. I try to not talk about too much technical on the mobile side. And I think, anyone have any quick question? Yes, please.
This is quite sad for the mobile industry, whereby seeing the ARPU for your individual customers getting reduced and reduced. But I would like to seek for a question. Look at the Asia landscape, whereby the price per customer is going down and down. But how about the other part of the country, like European or US? How could they survive?
I think that many mobile operators in US, in Europe, they notice about this one. They have to change the business plan. They have to make the new business. They have to go to the enterprise. They need not go to B2C only. They go to B2B also. You see the 5G, the first 5G is in Verizon. They have to introduce that the new market in the fixed wireless. And when they have to provide the fixed wireless, they start to provide the media service. They're doing media OTT by themselves. Now you can see that many broadband providers, they start to make money from the broadcast also. They just notice that the big side of the traffic in their own infrastructure is coming from the media. They start to partnering with the media provider or content provider. Some of them have to explore the new business model. But, okay. Any quick question?
Any other question? Okay, please. Give a hand for Dr. Jesada.
Thank you.
And for the next session, we have the panel discussion, and it will be on local traffic management strategy in the streaming era. And for this, Dr. Jesada will be our moderator, and may I invite the panelists on stage. First, Mr. Matt Jansen, Strategy Manager from Facebook. Mr. Martin J. Levy, Distinguished Engineer from Cloudflare, and Dr. Nitipong Boon-long, Commercial Director of SUPERNAP. Okay, and I will give the stage to Dr. Jesada, please.
Okay. Hello again. We come to the next session. Is the last session of today, and this session we talk about the local traffic management strategy in the streaming era. We have a good composite. We have a Facebook, we have a Cloudflare, and we have the local network operator. That we have to start. Before I ask anything, I have to start to ask everybody over here to introduce about yourself, your company, and your target in 2019. What is your company is focused in this year? Okay, maybe I start with Matt.
Thank you. My name is Matt Jansen. I'm the Edge Strategy Manager for Facebook in Asia Pacific. That encompasses essentially all our outward-facing connectivities, all the connectivity from Facebook to the network operators, the mobile operators, the fixed line operators, our POPs, our caches, our peering, our IX strategy. So everything that basically gets traffic from Facebook to the end user. Generally, as an outlook this year, a big part of that is just intensifying our existing partnerships with operators in this region, working together with them to get capacity deeper into their network, deploy closer to their end users. Basically, scaling capacity is a big factor. There's also like a lot of connectivity-focused initiatives we work with operators with, like the Telecom Infra project, like stuff like the dense urban wireless stuff, Telegraph, the open wireless stuff. And then another like big focus of ours in the last kind of year or so has been on resilience. So we've been working very closely with a lot of the operators on improving the resilience of connectivity in their network and also within our own network. So I'm actually presenting on that tomorrow if you guys are interested about like improving the resilience to ensure that services are available.
Okay, next for Martin.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Martin Levy. I'm from Cloudflare. I've spent probably about the first 4 years of my life at Cloudflare helping grow our infrastructure, very similar to what Matt said about getting closer to end users, building up the edge, deploying into both multiple countries, multiple cities, multiple operators. And of late, I've now sort of moved from that role, and I'm spending a lot more time in focusing on network security. When I say a lot more time, nearly a majority of my time. I still, because of being here in this discussion, focus still on this issue of how to get bits closer to the end user, how to optimize connectivity in some way or other. Cloudflare is a content delivery network. We do DDoS mitigation. We do a large amount of DNS. And every part of that simply says that we need to be deployed in this very large footprint all over the globe. So I think that's a good enough introduction for now.
Thank you, Martin. So Dr. Nitipong for the SUPERNAP.
Sure. My name is Nitipong Boon-long นะครับ I'm from SUPERNAP, Thailand. I'm responsible for the marketing and sales activity as a commercial director here in SUPERNAP. And SUPERNAP, Thailand, our parent company is called Switch, which is the most advanced data center from Las Vegas. And we bring in our patent, over 500 in terms of data center facility, and put here in Thailand as a tier 4 design data center in the country and probably in Southeast Asia. So we hope that by coming here as a foreign company, invested jointly with 2 of the major banks in Thailand, right? We hope to this year try to bring like for yourself, you're going to the edge with Facebook and Cloudflare and many other OTTs, right? You try to discuss or bring in these large corporate entities or content or OTT to bring here into Thailand to host, to be closer to the user, as well as trying to support the Thai enterprise in various verticals so they can have the most reliable data center with 100% uptime as a service.
Thank you, Dr. Nitipong. Now I have to start to talk to discussion about our topic, because our topic is about the traffic management. So I have to start to talk about the agenda. The first one, I talk about the data traffic growth and how you can respond for this one. The second one is the majority of the traffic is come from video. Many people, many customers now, they need to see the high definition 720p, but tomorrow they need a 180p, and the next one they may need a 360-degree video, and they need AR, VR. More and more video is coming to your network, coming to your service. How you can manage that? And the last one, we need the local expertise to talk about the regulation on OTT player, because Thailand, we are noticed as the most complexity in the telecom network in the world. Because many people, when I start to work with a foreign company to talk about what is the policy, what is the regulation, they really complicated. They say, oh, hard to understand, what is it? So maybe we have to talk in the third topic on the local expertise for this one. Sorry for ask the Dr. Nitipong only to ask on the third topic. Okay, may I start to talk about the first one, the trend of the data traffic growth and how to respond. You can see this picture. This one you can see, I try to presume data traffic, the mobile data traffic can presume as the whole broadband traffic. You can see that the increase of between Q1 2017 to Q1 2018 is increased 54%. But when I change to start to measure from Q4 from 2017 and 2018, they start to increase 88%. You can see this exponential growth, and this one is start at more and more. By the average of the traffic growth around the world in the mobile network, they say is around 45% per year. Now, did you have some idea? I have to start to question you about this one. First one, how to supply the huge data traffic growth like this from your viewpoint? When you see this one, increase 88% per year, 54% per year. Maybe I start with Matt first.
Sure, yeah. I mean, this is a trend that's been going on for a long time, to be quite honest. It might have started in different places later than others, but this is something that's been going on for a long time. And our prime focus there is to work with our partners to address this by primarily localizing traffic as much as possible to kind of reduce bottlenecks and get traffic as close as possible to the end users. And in Thailand specifically, like if you go like a couple of years back, everything was centralized in Bangkok, right? And that is something that's not sustainable anymore. And we've been working very well with several of our big partners here in Thailand to actually localize traffic and to break it out in regional cities to actually get traffic to where the users are. Bangkok is obviously a large part of that, but like a big problem, I think, for operators here was this extremely centralized, like, kind of infrastructure that dates back to kind of like very old kind of telco like thinking and 3G, 2G infrastructures, right? And we've seen this in the last year or so, like all the major operators here have actually like decentralized traffic, and we've been working with them to facilitate that and deploy caches in all of those regional cities to get traffic as close as possible to the end users to allow them to actually cater for that growth. And that has worked pretty well, I think, with all the major partners we have here to enable their growth.
Thank you. And now we move to Martin. You are content-driven network.
Yeah, so there are two answers to your question. And the second part may be slightly conflicting. So the easy part is to say, here's a graph of traffic growth, quarter over quarter, year over year, and sure enough, we're seeing large growth. We're seeing far more users come online. We're seeing the speed that they have available to them increase. We see their devices being smarter and more agile. And we're seeing the users being not only more intelligent, but simply more dependent, using the network more and more. So this isn't just incidental use, this is near continuous use. So if you just look at traffic, our graphs look very similar to other players. Up and to the right, continuous growth, continuous deployment, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just answering the question about raw bandwidth. But the question is more complicated than that, because, as Matt pointed out, telcos and users are not just sitting in a single point location. They're actually spread out over whatever the geography. An operator here may be spread out over the whole of Thailand. An operator in the US may be spread out over, obviously, a much larger geography. In Europe, it's slightly different. You get regional operators that are country-by-country basis. So although you have a very large land mass, the different operators exist, sometimes with partnerships, sometimes through acquisitions. And so the second aspect of the conversation comes down to the geography of how you split things. If you're in the building edge, it is not only because we share a lot in common in our needs of understanding where telcos are geographically, and where they or independent players have facilities capable of supporting the deployment of an edge cache. You can't just say, oh, here's my map, I want to go here. Because you may have a building that just is simply incapable of handling modern day edge equipment. It may have been good for telco. It may actually be good for mobile, but sometimes not. And so the quality of the data center, which I know you'll get to for us, the quality of the data center, or even the POP, the point of presence, becomes absolutely vital. Otherwise, simply saying, I'd like to deploy there, goes nowhere. Now, there's a third point, which is where we play in a rather heavy way. It isn't only about bandwidth. It turns out that an enormous amount of what people do when they open up their smartphone, they go to an app, they do a simple transaction, whether it's looking at the weather, the stock market, travel, or bank account or anything. It actually turns out that this is different, radically different, than sitting passively in front of a screen ingesting video streaming. So although video streaming grows dramatically and by time of day does change quite a bit, if you actually look at the type of usage, whether mobile or to a certain extent in the fixed world, but obviously less so, far more in the mobile world, you have to remember that there is a large amount of what people do that is a very small, simple query, response, and some visual interpretation of that inside an app. The app providing the value over and above a website of actually interpreting a small amount of data and generating a large amount of visual information. So when we look at our content delivery network and we see the type of traffic, we see a large amount of that. And a great example would be, let's pretend that I was a very healthy individual and that I had some device on my hand that was measuring my health on a regular basis, how many steps I made, what my heartbeat is, etc. It would be using my smartphone just to send a very small amount of information. And by the way, not receiving anything back. This is a very passive device until I open my smartphone and say, how many steps did I do today? Now, that type of communication actually needs to be short, sharp, precise, and be done with. So it turns out that things like latency, efficiency, a short path to the TCP connection, when you do, and then far more importantly, that's a communication that is, in this day and age, going over a secure HTTPS environment. So it turns out the other measure, when you look at the graph that you presented, which is accurate about bandwidth growth, it actually turns out there's a very interesting underlying graph there, which is how many transactions are occurring and where are they? Now, as a content delivery network, if I may just pitch this for a second, we actually specialize in that. We do a lot of very small item API calls. We protect them. We obviously give DDoS mitigation to them. So that's the third thing there, is that there's actually a large amount of that traffic, but it's traffic by event, a traffic by transaction. But there's a fourth. As you go and sort of unravel and sort of go down the rabbit hole of what is the internet, you realize that underlying all this, you have DNS queries. And you also, because of the fact that we live in such this world of secure communications, every time you go to a website or go to a different website or go to a bank or your phone does something, you are querying a certificate authority. Just 500, 1,000 bytes maybe, but that digital signature, whether it be an intermediary signature or a root signature or a signature for a website, is important to gain trust between the two ends of a communication. Again, very small transactions, but they must not, and DNS is even smaller than that, they must not stand in the way of that very quick and responsive connection. So as you unwind that big graph, keep in mind that there is more and more communication going on in the lower levels, which make everything that we do, including, by the way, just to add to it, all that stuff that our phone is doing in the background. The reason why our batteries don't last is because there's something going on. There's push messaging, there's updates, there's podcasts, or there's whatever. There's a lot of that back-end communication that's just occurring. So if I paint that picture for you from our point of view, it turns out that when we really spend our time talking to an operator, bandwidth is not, it's not unimportant, but it's actually not number one on the list. Okay. That latency, that the quality, absolutely, becomes a very important part. I hope that helps sort of broaden that area out a little bit.
Thank you, Martin. Move
Hey,
to
Martin, and you don't have to pretend. Your health is perfect. Yeah, I've seen you for the past 5-6 years. You look no change a bit at all. And just want to probably a different perspective. Like a few months ago, I got a chance to talk to the telematics industry, right? And they mentioned that Thailand have some law for the taxi, where they have to take pictures of people coming onto taxi and video before coming in and out, right? And to be regulated for the taxi driver. So a lot of taxi community, they try to invest in like these boxes, IoT box, whatever, and put SIM and take videos and things like that, right? But however, once it's launched, they have issue where the video was so much and they have to stop within a few months because they didn't plan for the data center side to scale enough to cope with the large data volume of the video and pictures that happens, right? So that would mean that in terms of the video consumption and growth, one point that's quite important is the scalability of where you put the data center, but not just to put but would those data center able to cope with the high growth like very fast? For example, maybe the first month you may have requirement only 5 racks. A few months you may need 20, 100. So not many data center can cope from 10 rack to 100 to 200 racks in less than 3 to 4 months, right? And I think that is something that people who make this strategy and plans have to also think about. And I agree in terms of the IoT that healthcare, you need to send information all the time, right? And we talk to a lot of healthcare provider and hospitals. Although they have these wearable devices, monitor all the time, right? They have to send the information somewhere. And although they may send as a small component at a time, but they have to, if they send it like every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, these data kind of grow quite fast. And sometimes these are some of the challenges that hospital also have in terms of where to, are they going to host these servers in their own on-premises, or are they going to find more expertise companies who specialize in these scalable and power consumption? But not only that, but especially when video consumption is coming in, right? People may look more pictures, more video, a lot of compute and storage is happening at the same time. So there's a lot of heat that will happen in the servers itself. And that will mean that the cooling technology, in order to cope with this high heat that happens when high compute is happening, is something that really have to look into. And I think that Facebook has a open compute project initiative, which is very I would say powerful and very meaningful for the industry, because you guys use in the past, open community has been doing a lot on the software side, right? However, Facebook and some other company has initiated the open compute project for the hardware side in order to try to design these high density cabinet using traditional server or traditional power supply in order to cope with the high demand of Facebook, where they give out like maybe, I'm sure that Matt can talk more about it, but we see that this trend of open compute is will come to Thailand eventually, very soon, and all these servers generate a lot of heat and power consumption based on video consumption and all these OTT and cloud services that's going to happen. That's how we see the video growth. So we think that the high power consumption and scalability will be quite important to look into as well.
Okay, maybe video part we will next move to this. But when I heard your answer, you say something, try to move the equipment to closer to the user, decentralized, not use a centralized like the old day of the mobile world. Because in my mobile world now they have started talking about the edge computing. I did not quite sure it's the same thing with you. That I need to ask you guys about the edge computing. This is the right time to apply this technology to the network.
Strictly speaking, like what we're doing, like caching kind of closer to the edge is not really the exact same thing as what like the network equipment manufacturers call edge computing. I mean, this is the idea of kind of like them providing like a shared hardware platform in the mobile base station. That's something somebody like us and many other kind of big global kind of players that have personal information cannot actually do. So we cannot put our content on some shared infrastructure that isn't our servers for privacy and security reasons, right? So the kind of like edge compute propagated by the equipment manufacturer, by you guys, for example, right? That's not really something that we're doing. But like the caching we do on our own like in-house developed caching platform obviously serves a very similar purpose about, again, getting stuff as close as possible to the end user and therefore allowing it to scale, right? This is really, if you look at a lot of our content that's actually highly cacheable, it's like, I was saying that earlier briefly, it's like in Thailand, like this is more than 90% of our traffic actually stays local. And that obviously allows scaling large amounts of end user data without having large amounts or as large amounts of backbone capacity. So yeah, there's a lot of overlap. It's not the exact same thing, but it serves a very similar purpose, and it has the same end goal about like decentralizing data and therefore multiplying this scale by orders of magnitude that wouldn't be possible if it was coming from a central place.
So now we get to give a different answer.
Finally.
So this is where a network like Cloudflare's and a network like Facebook's completely diverge. The one common statement is the common statement about edge compute from the mobile operators. Good luck. It'll go nowhere for all manner of control reasons, and it's been proven that way many times. So let's talk about edge compute from our point of view. We have, at every site that we deploy around the world, we now deploy edge compute. And the edge compute is available through the same mechanisms that you operate your content delivery network, but instead of delivering a file at the edge of the network close to that end user, whether it be a web page or a font file or an image or whatever, we give the user the ability, or give the operator of the website the ability to execute code directly at the edge within milliseconds of the end user in a controlled environment, fully manageable, and we now, and of course it's done in what is called a serverless environment. And serverless is another one of those great words that has been created by this industry that means exactly what it says and yet makes no sense. So let me explain. In order to execute a piece of code, you need a computer. Here, let me use my trusty laptop as an example. This thing is a computer and it can execute code, and hopefully if I open the screen, I see the results of that. Well, imagine for a moment that inside every edge location, there are racks and stacks of servers, which there are, and those servers are then managed not just as an individual server for an individual user, but millions upon millions of different domains, all of which have access to a small amount of compute. But the word serverless in the edge compute environment means that there isn't a server, there isn't a piece of metal, there isn't a particular computer that's allocated to a particular user. And secondly, there isn't a piece of software that's operating as a particular domain or as a particular user saying, I'm waiting for a request. Oh, I've got a request. I'll execute my request, and here's my results from my request. In the old model, you would either physically put a server into a data center, or you would spin up a server in a cloud environment, which ultimately is a server in a data center. The data center component never goes away. But in a serverless environment, you are spinning up a process based upon a web query, a web request. You're executing, you're responding, and you're disappearing. And all that done in something even more efficient than a containerized environment. So in our environment, it's a worker-based environment. It's JavaScript V8 or other languages now. And it is this idea that you may have anything from a 20-line script to hundreds of thousands of lines of packaged code. And we have users at quite that extreme, if not many hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And they are executing part of that code right at the edge with the least amount of milliseconds to the user and then disappearing because they've done the job that they're meant to do. So that 20-line piece of code is a simple example. Something, imagine this is software. If my browser is a smartphone, then go to this web page behind the system and deliver those bits. If it's a computer, then go to this other page. Or maybe it is, oh, the location that the query has come from is in Thailand, so send the Thai script web page. Or it's in the US or Europe or somewhere else, send a different script, a different language. Simple set of code, very, very useful, a fundamental function of a website, but done right there at the edge without the user needing to do anything but just to go to www.whatever, some website, an airline, wherever, and that decision is made. And we run billions of those types of edge compute examples all day long, if not hundreds of billions.
Can I say that we are moving for the computing capability from the smartphone to the edge computing?
Well, absolutely. The smartphone is the last place you want to do compute, and that's the battery power problem, right? And you want to be also not going all the way back to some massive data center or cloud service. There's a middle ground. So if you can offset some of the code, so instead of loading up a massive amount of JavaScript into the browser, which costs the battery of the, but it costs communication, but it costs the battery as well. But if you leave it all the way on the server, then it's far, far away. There's this middle ground, and that's that edge compute environment. So we deployed Workers about a year and a bit ago. The uptake on it is insane because this is exactly the problem space people are trying to solve. Because we are a content delivery network that delivers for, I think now, 16 million domains, so an enormous variety, all of the process of separation and understanding and security is already in place. So although this sounds like a pitch, I'm trying to bring it back to sort of explaining this from a compute point of view. The point is that in a container world or in a workers environment like ours, we already have the understanding that my website and your website and somebody else's website are separate things that must never interact. The privacy and security that I want, that somebody else wants, are separate and must be separate. And as we already have that as the basis of our network that we operate, expanding that to compute is a natural, easy step without having to reinvent the wheel. And it isn't as expensive as spinning up containers or definitely virtual machines, which is an insanely expensive process by today's standards. And so that edge compute becomes a real part of what people want to deploy. And as I said, it can be anywhere from 20 lines of code through hundreds of thousands of lines of code that are packaged, managed, and delivered out to the end site. And the fact that we can deploy to an edge around the world in less than a second just by shipping new code into the system, just like any other CDN function, it also means that your ability to deploy is well, basically near instantaneous. Edge compute changes everything in the way that either websites or web properties or applications on phones communicate. My pitch, to go back, be a little argumentative here, but in a polite way, this works because of the security models that exist inside the content delivery network. And that's, by the way, not just a Cloudflare issue. All content delivery networks have to understand that. Telecom operators don't have this. Really don't have this. So, yeah, there is a requirement for compute at the edge, but probably to run the mobile network, not to run third-party environments. There's a big difference there.
Dr. Nitipong.
I guess from the data center perspective, the edge, we look into probably two groups. One is probably a trend that we see in the past between compute and storage, where sometimes the compute is with the hub, the main hub, like Singapore and Hong Kong, and sometimes the storage is more closer to the edge. While what we see the trend of, like a few weeks ago, we went to join like the Edge Asia compute event, where it's a trend that compute and storage is moving closer towards the edge as opposed to separating. I think that's the trend that we see, where that's one part, that the compute and storage are coming closer to the user, probably not as close in the future, maybe in the phones, but at least closer as a territory-wise. And another thing that we see as a trend from the data center perspective on edge is from the modular design on container. When we say container, it's different than the container from your perspective. It's actually a physical container-based data center. And that we see is growing quite a bit, because a lot of companies getting compute and storage nearer to the site or nearer to the user, and sometimes to build data center will take time. So they're kind of like going towards the modular design using container-based data center. And we see that growing quite a bit. For example, we can see in Myanmar, company that builds a data center based on container seems to grow very fast, while they may use Thailand as primary hub to get the data. So these are the trends that we see happening into the region, and we hope that sooner a lot of these requirements will come, bringing the compute and storage all the way into the country, so Thailand can be closer to the user, as well as being able to help the latency for countries like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia to gather as a primary compute hub for these countries. That's how we see the edge is coming about.
Okay. Different
Actually, I really want to agree with that. There are multiple solutions for multiple things. You mentioned something very key: storage being more localized, and that sometimes is for regulatory or other control reasons. Big compute is hard to build. It is hard to build very, very large data centers. So you're never going to move away from big cloud providers using major cities, major communication hubs to build large amounts of compute. You can move things to the edge, but you will never get away from that core compute requirement, because you've always got to go back to somewhere ultimately at some point in the communication path. And the other key part about that graph you showed of that massive year-over-year graph, there is no shortage of of core compute and core storage requirement. That is not going away. You can move little snippets of code closer to the end user, but ultimately you are generating more things to store, more things to compute in the back end of the world. There's no end in sight with the way that we're working at the moment.
Thank you. We have a lot of point of view when we talk about edge computing, because I am from the mobile operator side. When we talk with the edge computing, we say that the closer to the customer right now is the base station, because like in Thailand we have a 50,000 base station. Each base station is not far from customer than 500 meters. They think in the mobile side, they think if we put the computing capability, storage capability in the base station, it may be close to the user or something like that. I think there's a different story from your side.
Yeah, there's a different story, but I want to understand the statistics that you just mentioned. So 50,000 base stations. But a base station is not where... Here's another prop. This mobile phone ultimately speaks IP. We're in the internet world. So there's a PDP session that this phone creates. And it terminates not in 50,000 locations, but in far fewer. And the question is, how many? So how many aggregation points is there in a place like Thailand? Let's pick one random unnamed network as an example. It isn't one location, Bangkok, right? Yeah. Not anymore, yeah. Right? But how many locations is it where the actual IP finally starts flowing for this phone and for its millions and millions of buddies? How many locations in a place like Thailand is that?
Now they use a centralized internet data center from their own, but now they have the concept that if we move to the edge computing, they have to decentralize. It has have a center, big IDC anymore. They will use to tie to this one.
Right. So you're not going to decentralize to 50,000 locations. You're going to decentralize to, well, 2 is a bad number. 3 is a bad number. 6?
No.
For a place like Thailand, is it 6?
I mean, to give an example from the operators here in Thailand we work with, the number is between 10 and 20 that we've been partnering with them, that they would actually break out IP traffic in.
How many mobile users?
Now it's 90 million. 90 million subscribers.
Okay, so let's say you break out mobile to 6 or 12, which is fine. You gave the example of Jio in India. So they're slightly less than 30 breakout. Can't say the exact number, but let's say slightly less than 30. If you said you were going to put edge compute in 30 locations, that would make more sense. 50,000, you're not selling me that that's doable, because this thing needs to terminate its IP. It somewhere, it has to start its IP, actually, is a better way of saying it, somewhere. And if that somewhere is 10 to 12 locations in a country like Thailand, first of all, that's the maximum number of POPs per carrier that we would deploy, or could deploy, as would any other content player. And an edge compute would only be in those 10 or 12 locations, because all the others are moving a PDP session, and essentially it's a backhaul network of an RF signal. Well, it's a backhaul of the bits that flow over an RF network. That's a better way of saying it. So it's important to understand the scale that we need to build networking. Because the other thing that is a good idea to bring up in this part of the conversation, when you talk about edge, is that while were comfortable building a single POP into Bangkok, and 4 years ago, maybe we were comfortable of being just in Hong Kong and just in Singapore for 10 or 12 South Asia countries, and maybe more. We are not comfortable with only owning one place to interconnect into networks in a place like, let's say, Bangkok in Thailand. It has to go to 2, it has to go to 4, it has to go to 10 or 12, whatever that number is. So when we look at the number of dots that we're building in a place like India, I may or may not have mentioned that number. If I look at the Philippines, getting to 3 is hard because of just the mindset and just understanding how to break telcos apart. In the UK, going to 6 or 7 is an enormous win over 1, London. And then it was 2 when it was London and Manchester. But even that did not work. And it does not work in a place like Germany. It does not work in a place like France. And in China, it absolutely does not work. You do not build into Shanghai and Beijing and say, I'm done, because that does not work. I think we're at 22 or 26. I can't remember what the exact number of cities in China. And that is still not enough. So it is really important to project to the network operators in the room that you need to understand the breakout because of one of 2 things that are happening. The first thing is, and you mentioned this in your introduction, the number of users is increasing. In fact, the number of Gs is increasing, which I would argue may or may not mean anything. But what the user does on this phone is becoming more and more a continuous part of life. And bringing it all back into one place is going to make such a hot data point that it is impossible to manage. So as an edge builder, it is important to understand that this decentralization occur to an appropriate level, not to 50,000, but to 10 or 12 in a country like Thailand. That's not bad. That's a good start. And the good news is that there's enough examples out there that show you that you're not that far behind, because there are some other telcos around the world that do a very poor job of this.
Thank you, Martin.
I want to ask Martin a question also. When you say you're comfortable building like 10 nodes for Thailand, right? But Thailand also have many operator, like many mobile operator, fixed line operator. So does it mean that 10, you're okay to build 10, put servers in 10 of these, each of them, if they actually have a space for you to put servers, AS, DTAC, Remove, Jazztail, whoever, they all have a space for you. Would you put 10 of your Cloudflare CDN into their facility, so that may add up to like a large amount of cabinets?
Okay, so this is where Thailand differentiates itself, if I may be very polite in saying this, not in a positive way. Whereas we can build into a handful of cities into a country like Germany or France or the UK, and then distribute into multiple carriers. So we only need to be, we don't need to build one big node in a Manchester or into a Düsseldorf or a Sydney, Australia versus a Perth. In Thailand, we are built into each operator separately. And that is a function of the inability to get to independent data centers with enough bandwidth and operators that understand how to build networks in a more independent manner. So we are stuck in Thailand. So what we do is we build into each operator. And let me tell you who that benefits. Not one of those operators. And the reason is this, is that the content delivery network, amongst many other things, right at the base of the technology is a content cache. And the content cache does one thing. It retrieves a file once, and its job is to distribute that file as many times as possible. And the efficiency of the cache, the efficiency that it returns, is based upon one fundamental factor. How many users are plugged into that cache? Because when something happens, and you can think of this as a flash event or just the general, everybody wakes up in the morning and they read the news, the local newspaper or the local TV uses a CDN, a content delivery network, and so everybody goes to that homepage. Now, the homepage is slightly specialized because your homepage is biased towards sports. Your homepage is biased towards what to buy for kids. Mine is obviously based upon health. And therefore, we get a slightly different homepage from that local TV station or newspaper. But it turns out a majority of the content, cleverly, is identical. The more users go to a single cache, the more efficient that cache is. Conversely, if you just break the cache and you put a cache in operator A and B and C and D and E and F, you've actually wasted bandwidth, you've wasted compute, you've wasted this inefficiency. You're literally bringing that homepage into 6 different locations before you even worry about the user base, which is now 1/6 the size of a bigger cache. So, for example, a build in a Hong Kong or Singapore is orders of magnitude more efficient than a build in a carrier, whether it be a carrier here in Thailand or in Mongolia or in Peru or wherever. So it turns out that it, in fact, does make a difference. And the environment here and the great work that has been done by the Internet Exchange of understanding that people should be in one place, it's been lost on the big carriers here, if I may use the microphone to say this. And the people that are losing out are the carriers. Ultimately, the end users, of course, because it turns out, and one of my favorite statements is, have you ever wondered who actually pays for our salaries as we sit up here? And the answer is, if I use the prompt again, it is the end user at home who is buying a mobile phone and then buying services on it that ultimately is funding the carriers, funding the equipment manufacturers, the social medias, the data centers, and everything else. That's where the money's coming from. So you want to deliver to them the best possible service so they buy more. Your talk earlier talked about the fact that, we're delivering more bits, we're not making as much money. Well, it turns out, great news, the technology is capable of delivering more bits for a lot less. Yes, your business has been marginalized. Yeah. Sorry about that. But keep the end user happy and using the internet. And if I even take it further and say, sort of dependent on the internet, because that's what keeps our business going. So this is, it gets a little hairy when you discuss this, but that is a key part of efficiency. So you don't want one big data center. You want some diversity, both geographic, redundancy-wise. But if you keep building into each individual carrier, so you're in 6 different data centers in a Bangkok, and then as you go into 10 or 12 other cities and major regions inside the country, you build again by 6. At some point in time, we just go, we're not going to do it. So now the end user just doesn't get the same delivery. And the model that's been used in Europe, in the US and Australia and many other places, is not the model that's used here. And by the way, not only here. Most of APAC. I mean, you try putting the two major carriers in the same room in the Philippines. They just will not talk to each other. Not a good thing. Does that answer your question? It's a very long-winded.
Yeah, actually, that actually answered my question, and I think it's a trend that we should perhaps try as a Thai community with these kind of events. Try to, if let's say we're going to have like 10 major regional data center modularized or whatever in each location, it's probably best that a mobile operator and fixed line operator talk together and use somewhere together. So people like you guys and Facebook just put 10 instead of 60. And it makes sense for you guys also, I guess, from that perspective.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a good session that we have to talk about. Before I move to the next topic, maybe I need some response from the floor. Anyone have a quick question? Yeah, please. Anybody can give the microphone?
Somebody got a spare mic?
Thank you. Great presentation. I like the idea, putting basically caches into data centers. I'm working for the Cambodia Network Exchange. We have talked to many people who are having caches. The question that always comes up is, who will pay for the cache fill? If we put it there, we're not going to pay for it. So who is going to pay for it? And we have a similar issue with Facebook, who is basically saying, well, we don't want to push it in IX because then nobody is paying for it, and we not allow you to resell that as a service if we're offering the cache there. So there's kind of a different opinion that I hear here that you would like to do it, but my experience as an operator is you actually don't. Sorry to say.
To be fair here, like we do operate this model in quite a few internet exchanges in Asia Pacific, and we are happy to distribute the at cost cash flow between the members. That's how a lot of exchanges do this, right? What we're not happy with is somebody reselling our cash at a profit.
Now, we've managed to get this model to work, and I can describe it at a very high level because it may be useful to sort of realize that it's how you say it that makes it work. So the model that we have seen implemented and that we have executed with our internet exchanges is that the cache fill, and this is normally in locations, and I think this is exactly your issue, it's locations where transit is expensive, where IP bandwidth is expensive. This is not Washington, D.C. or Hong Kong or Frankfurt, where it's peanuts. It's just noise. This is in places where it's expensive. So what we have done is worked with the internet exchange operators who have the technology, like the ability to measure flow data and to measure per internet exchange member traffic levels, and to turn around and go, okay, for a particular CDN delivering to 4 or 5 or 20 ISPs, the inbound bandwidth, which is purchased not by the content delivery network, but by the internet exchange, or as maybe as a slightly independent entity, the flow data of the use of the internet exchange ports for the content delivery network is then used as the split of that cost. And you charge each of your members, if they connect to that CDN, their percentage of usage on the cache fill. So let's say the cache fill is half a gig's worth of traffic, and you have 3 internet exchange members using the CDN, and their split is 20%, 20%, 60%, because you've got one that's bigger than the other two. You split the cost, the 20, 20, 60, and you do that under the appropriate levels of contract that you feel comfortable with. As a content delivery network, we don't get involved in that in-country, in-location mathematics and billing. We simply provide the content delivery capability. This model has worked. It's worked for more than 3, and it's worked for more bandwidth than that. But you have to have a lot of things in agreement in order to make this be something that you want to take on. And in one case, I know that this was done by an independent entity, so that the money was kept away from the internet exchange, purely just because of the management model. An internet exchange, if operated correctly, is just an internet exchange and nothing else. So it doesn't compete with anybody. That's actually a whole other conversation of how to run an internet exchange, but that's not your question. Does that model work for you or could work for you?
We actually asked Cloudflare 2 months ago when they came to Cambodia if that is something we could do, and Cloudflare told us that they need to consider that. But when you're saying it now that you're already doing it, then I think I should go back to my contract and say, yes, that is something that is supported.
Right. So I can explain the considering part, because this is the next part of the model. You have to have enough volume. So if the volume level is too low, which could be simply not enough members participating, and I think Facebook has the same issue. Yeah, if the bandwidth levels are too low, the cache efficiency literally becomes negative. In other words, there just isn't enough usage of the content to make the displacement of a CDN worthwhile. And so your members may end up paying more because of a CDN being present instead of paying less. And there's some magic bandwidth numbers, which of course are changing over time. But I think I know who you're speaking to at Cloudflare. So find me afterwards and I'll share with you some of the numbers.
I think we have a slightly better situation than Thailand. Every carrier in Cambodia is actually peering at our exchange.
Okay,
so
well, congratulations on that.
It took only 10 years, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your support.
Okay, I have to move to a next topic. This one we have to talk in the detail about the video, because from this information you can see that in the year 2018 we have a 27 hexabit per month. Now in the next, I think it's about 6 years, in 2024, the traffic will be increased to 136 exabytes. But you can see the portion. The portion right now is only 68%, and in the future, increase in the number and increase in the portion of the video. I may ask you about the policy. Should we have to have a policy traffic management differentiate between video traffic and non-video traffic or not, or something like that?
You're talking about network neutrality?
No.
Okay, because I don't want to have that conversation. These numbers, can you just drill down on these numbers a little bit more? This is a 27 to 136 growth in video.
No, for the whole traffic.
For the whole traffic.
For the whole, yes. But the percentage of video is growing also. You can see that like social, the data is growing, but the percentage is less. Because in this year, for the social traffic is 12. Now in the next 2024, they have only 8%. But the number is growing. So the thing that the growth is coming from the video centric. So like from operator side, we are concerned that the video have to make more definition. Now they need a full high depth. Next, they need to a 360 video. And next, they need to use AR, VR that need more bandwidth on this one. how about that? The policy to manage for the video traffic with the growing like this in the future?
I mean, I think Martin alluded to that earlier, right? It's like, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's like, this is something the user, who is in the end the one funding all of this, wants to use. And if you make the user happy by letting him use what he wants to use, he will use it more and he will pay for it, right? So, like, managing it sounds somewhat like you want to restrict it. Is that what you mean by manage, or?
I can say that. Do we need a new technology, new algorithm, new policy, that if we have a video, we have to let it pass first or something like that, to take a resource from the network or something?
I would not say so. Like, I mean, Martin again talked about that earlier. Like, there is different kinds of traffic that have somewhat different demands on the network, right? Like a lot of like very small packet data stuff, which in this graph, if you only look by volume, looks small, but that's actually in many ways often more relevant to the user experience, right? And you have to account for all of that. I mean, in the end, it is about building a network that makes your user happy, as we heard earlier, right? Because if the user is happy and he is using your platform more, he becomes more dependent on it. He is a happy customer, he will stay with your network versus your competitor, and he will actually use it more and pay you more money, right? So yeah, I think it doesn't need to be managed. You need to scale the technology, and again, like, the technology allows you to do that with new stuff, to be able to deliver what your end users want to use. I don't think you should manage your end users. They are the ones paying your bill.
Okay.
Let me tell you a story. I went to the local superstore and bought a TV last week. It actually turned out they didn't have it in stock. The guy spent some time showing me the latest and greatest, but it doesn't matter. I sat there and I opened up my phone, and I already had their app, and I had an account, and I made sure I had the right model number, and I said, click, and it charged my credit card, and it got delivered literally 2 days later. I mean, which was perfect. So I bought a 2019 latest and greatest smart TV. Bolted it on the wall, got the remote control, configured it. It has no antenna, has no cable connection. It just has Wi-Fi, and I only stream. Given up watching TV a long time ago. That TV cost me, over and above what I paid to buy it, $5 a month so far. Because the first thing I did when I got my Netflix up and running was flip to the latest and greatest show that had come out, which I must say is well worth watching, and all about street food. And the first episode was about Bangkok, Thailand. And it was 4 days before I got on an airplane here. But you know what that Netflix app did? It said, oh, you have a 4K ultra high def television. Would you like to upgrade your Netflix subscription and pay an additional $5 a month so you can stream in ultra high def? I just handed over that money. I am the end user to which I talked about earlier, and which Matt just talked about. And my intermediary, my service provider, which has plenty of, in this case, I'm talking about Netflix, but I can talk about anything, has plenty of caches inside its network. Delivered me 4K streaming, uninterrupted, did not quiver, did not stall, did not stop at any point in time. And because I'm a geek, I went through the menu and I got the bandwidth numbers, and it showed all the quality controls, and I hadn't missed a frame, and I was running about 23 megabits worth of bandwidth continuously. And that food looked, I mean, I've got every place in Bangkok, I will be there. Anybody who knows me knows that I like street food a lot. But that will be what I will be doing in a couple of nights' time and find me privately if you want to know where. But to rewind it and talk about the internet part of it, I got delivered something that I wanted. That TV looks fantastic. The quality of the content looks fantastic. The ease of use of just turning up a new device and actually having a very good, I didn't have to type my password into that TV. It has a token-based system where an existing device is used to authenticate the TV, and therefore there's no password on this new device. But all of that experience, forget the geek part about it, is what an end user wants to experience. And the network, in theory, has to deliver that. And even after 2 or 3 days before I left, I can tell you that within that particular app and service provider, content provider that I mentioned, and all the others, they've all delivered. It is a testament to the quality of software that is now being provided to end user devices, the ease of use, and the fact that the internet is the most fundamental thing. The internet helps that be delivered. So, to go back and push that point that I said earlier, and I have said many times, it is about the end user's desire and willingness to spend money that will mean that the money flow and the content and the infrastructure will be paid for. Now, it so happens, again, I mentioned earlier about the geek factor, I have plenty of bandwidth into my home. That's a function of, well, me. But if I did not have enough bandwidth, and I got this new TV, and I got this ultra high def, I would have simply have gone and upgraded my ISP bandwidth and said, give me more because I see the value of that. Now, equating that to mobile is an interesting problem because I lack a very fundamental part of this formula. I live in America. I use my mobile phone when I walk out. Well, I actually use it around the house. I have no phone, but no one makes phone calls. Somebody said that earlier today. No one makes phone calls. So I use a fixed line connectivity in my house for the things in my house. When I leave, my phone is in my pocket and it is mobile. And yes, I do occasionally watch video while I'm mobile, but nothing like what I see in societies like Southeast Asia. Nothing. The US is so backward from that usage, it's not even funny. But what's interesting is, last year I went, late in the year, I went to Lagos, Nigeria. I had a fantastic time. But I learned something about mobile usage in Lagos, or in Nigeria in general. And the simple part is there's very little fixed line connectivity. So everybody tethers to their mobile device. And the mobile plans are based upon that. And the usage is fundamentally different to what you see in the US. Sure, I can tether and I can do all that, but the mindset is fundamentally different. So as you look around here, you can tell us sort of, what the usage model is. In Lagos, it is quite norm to have a mobile device that's plugged into a power supply that is running a tethered Wi-Fi spot, and the TV is running off of the mobile device. Something I wouldn't do that. I don't live in a the society that goes that route. But it made perfect sense. And it wasn't just the TV, it would be the iPad or the Android pad or tablet or whatever that was in this household. And as it was explained to me, and the model, the usage model, and the other aspect of this was the very high amount of Nollywood locally created video, which changes dramatically other parts of the formula around where is the video created and stored, and how do people watch it, and when do people watch it. So it's important to understand that the cultural use of the internet then affects how mobile, how tethered, how fixed line usage is. But it still boils down to, are you giving the user what they want? The last point, and I did this, I went back onto my mobile device to watch that same program. I'd watched it 4K on a beautifully big TV, and it was stunning. I went back to my phone and realized that my eyesight is useless. So if you go look at bandwidth, I do not need 4K on my phone. There would be no value, and I don't think it does it anyway. So keep that in mind, that the usage should be taken, the health of the viewer should be taken into account. You shouldn't just be delivering the most amount of bits that you can because the number's the best. No, you actually have to understand what the end user really does. That may be the only type of bandwidth management that I think is palatable, again, without getting into a big net neutrality conversation.
Thank you.
I just want to add, I totally agree with Matt and Martin that we, in Thailand, we should not be trying to manage the traffic of video. However, from another perspective, we should also encourage content provider, like for example, you get to experience 4K Netflix in the US. We would probably try to encourage Netflix to have those kind of service for people in Thailand, and how to get that help for the Thai consumer. I think from that perspective, we want to use this kind of session to bring in not just like people like Netflix, but also people like perhaps like Dailymotion or VK.com or whatever video content out there to come to Thailand to try to get those kind of experiences that Netflix or you have in the US. And I think that from that perspective, I think we should encourage video infrastructure to be able to cope with those kind of services that may come into the country and see the value of the money they can make from other source of content for the Thai consumer that will bring in this more kind of content without trying to tell the market that we're going to manage video content, things like that.
Thank you. So maybe I have to move to a next topic. That's one way. Maybe I have to show that I have some information. This one before my question. This one that I got from the Thailand traffic from the media OTT player. The thing that I got is really interesting because in the last year, 2018, we found some application is a local app, like video local app named as HTV. They got a lot of traffic, like a video traffic, a lot in the mobile network. HTV is an OTT player that developed by the True mobile operator. Even though True have the True ID video also. And another one that have a next big movement is about the AAS player. This information is look like that the broadband operator, mobile operator, or fixed line operator, they need to moving something to develop their own media player on this one in Thailand. That's why I have to ask you about that. Why we have to concentrate on the video or something like that. Because now, in the past, the big video traffic is coming from the YouTube, but the last year is not. It's come from the local one. That's one is really strange on this one. It's like the business. The local broadband thing, they need to develop their own content. They need to develop their own new service that relating to the video or something like that. That is the movement of this one. So maybe that is beside of my question. The question is on this topic is about the regulation on the OTT player that I have to ask Nitipong on this one, because you just heard that NBTC, the regulator, have the plan to correct the fee from the OTT. If the OTT send more traffic, they will collect the money from that OTT player. They will ask the IIG to counting the number of each OTT player. Do you think this policy have a pro and con on this one?
Sure. Before I address that, I would assume that people like AS and True, right? Perhaps they may make some deals with great content provider, and then the Thai community use those content. Or sometimes also in Thailand, sometime like the Thai series, sometime at some peak point, people may watch a lot through the internet. So perhaps they may cut some deals with some content provider to make those high increase in data traffic, but I don't believe that mobile operator are really creating content by themselves.
From my team study about the HTV, they found some strength. This content the video is coming from the around neighborhood country, like Myanmar,
Yes.
Cambodia.
Okay.
That is have a labor come to Thailand a lot.
Yeah.
That's why they're growing really fast, because if you download the HTV, they have 1 million download last year. They can see the movie from the Myanmar, the movie from Cambodia is for free or something like that.
Yes, from that perspective, that's possible because during some visits to Myanmar recently, right, and even the telecom world a few months ago, right, Myanmar content has been growing quite a bit, and there's also around almost 3 to 4 million Myanmar working in Thailand, right? I think probably that was one of the reasons that a lot of content from Myanmar is increasing. And I forgot the name of the company that's growing quite a bit in Myanmar, but probably we have some Myanmar colleagues here. She probably can note that later. While in terms of the NBTC regulation, right? I think we should not have this kind of additional tax, I would say, in terms of content or OTT, because that will kind of because Thailand is also competing against other countries, right? For example, from a data center perspective, like what we are, right? We're trying to bring the content or OTT from Singapore and Hong Kong to come to Thailand to serve our user, not just Thailand, but Indochina. But if the regulator try to put increase in costs in terms of OTT coming into the country, that will make us more difficult to bring in the OTT from traditional major hub into Thailand. And at the end, that will not be good for consumer. And the regulator, we believe, should not be sensing this kind of initiative, because it will probably cause worse than good. And also, mobile operator are already paying quite a large sum of money to the regulator in terms of licensing fee and USO fee, right? And they're already getting money from that. So we believe it's probably not a point to collect directly from the OTT. While some company, for example, right, people may not, in the future right now there's Line Mobile, right? And I think in countries like Japan, Rakuten has come up with a new mobile operator, right, using e-commerce. So they believe that people may use e-commerce and then just use mobile as like the access to their end service. For example, let's say if Facebook, right, if you guys happen to get MVNO license in Thailand, right, and people would probably want to use Facebook. They probably not bother about either AS, DTAC, or TrueMove. Who cares? They probably care more of using the Facebook. So once that time comes, and people like Line Mobile or maybe Facebook Mobile or whatever can make money on that perspective, then the regulator can collect money from that service or based on the MVNO fee. Something like that would probably more appropriate. I also talked to Tesco Lotus Mobile. They recently they've been saying that the Tesco mobile business is growing pretty good in UK, and I think the regulators should look more from that perspective in terms of how to create more providers or more services for the consumer, not trying to focus on making money on top. It's like a double tax because you tax mobile operator already for the data consumption, and you're going to tax more on the OTT. That I think that doesn't make sense for the country as a whole.
Okay, understand that. Because I work in regulator before, the one that I heard that many times there is a complaint to the regulator, like the local operator, local mobile, local broadband. They have to pay the spectrum fee, they have to pay the license fee, they have to pay user fee, and fee, blah, 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 a lot of things. He say, but OTT did not pay anything. He say, oh, it's not fair for us because we have to give some money to the government, by the government did not contribute anything for us, something like that. That's why it's behind the scene from this idea, that why they have to think, oh, okay, now we collect the money from the mobile, why we did not innovate the new way to collect the money from the OTT player or something like that. That's one. That's why I asked what is the pro and con, what we should do or we not should do on this one.
Sure, I can give another example. When I used to work on a business where we do wholesale voice, that's a long time ago. It doesn't work anymore these days. But however, at those times, right, we compete with the likes of the international carrier wholesale, right? While our domestic operation has to pay domestic fees under regulation. So at the end, we're not able to compete in the international business because we're taxed, while people like PCW or some other regional carrier has a different cost structure. So if regulator can help Thai company to compete regionally, I think they can help quite a lot, especially from the upcoming OTT perspective. It's probably better to help Thai OTT to grow and then compete abroad, perhaps maybe reducing tax, not to charge more. Probably that's a better perspective.
Thank you. I think we still have some time. Maybe we need the response from the floor. Any quick question? Comment? Okay, please. I need somebody to pass.
Thank you very much. I'm Warapot from China Mobile International, based in Thailand here. Just add to the regulation issue. I think from my opinion, I think it's easier said than done. Since it's nowadays, you see lots of user-generated contents, available like on a TikTok platform from China, and from a well-known platform like YouTube and Line and Facebook. So it's difficult to dealing with, nowadays content world, because it's not just driven by a big content provider. There's a big streaming, from user-generated contents. So it's very difficult to regulate it in that area. And also, from the marketing perspective, I think you enlighten me, in terms of scaling of the internet traffic and content delivery traffic, from the Chinese operator perspective. As you know, there's a ITMC or Internet Traffic Management Center in a country as big as China. There are 5 ITMCs, one in Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Kunming, the latest one. But the international internet gateway only reside in Hong Kong. That help, grooming of the traffic and scalability, and in terms of, make use of the most from CDN platform. That's the scaling that we need in Thailand. Actually, yeah, that just like my perspective from one of the Chinese operator here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your sharing report. Any other question? Comment? Objection? No. So
Hi. I have a question related to the 5G session that you mentioned as well. So you mentioned about that we need more spectrum for that. And now we look into the behavior of the TV user now. It's like controversial that nowadays less and less users try to watch TV on the normal TV, digital TV, analog TV. But the behavior of the user is changing to move to the internet and so on. So in terms of spectrum, that we are lacking of spectrum. So what is your opinions about the regulations and so on? How can we benefit or utilizing the spectrum on those TV frequency band that we are not using much nowadays? Or how to compensate them to for this kind of traffic that we try to move on internet?
First of all, about the spectrum, government have to change the philosophy first. Spectrum is not for sale. Government should not expect to make money from assign the spectrum to the market. Spectrum should be assigned to create the new economy, to support the business in this country. That is the point. Because we have a lot of frequency in the air, but nobody can use it. Due to that, they did not have the money to pay to the government. That is the first philosophy that we saw is a lot of struggle on this one. This thing happened in India before. After that, in Thailand, you can see that government side, they are interested in the, I call watermelon KPI. In the outside is green, it look okay, but inside is a lot of trouble. They have lead inside. They think that if they can sell the spectrum with the highest price in the world, is a successful factor, is a successful KPI. I say, don't know. That being a lot of the problem up until today. You can see that in the Thailand, we have a long history around when we have the public auction with a high price, we get a big problem for a long period. In the first time that a long time ago, TT&T, they pay 43 revenue sharing to the government to have like a concessionaire or something like that. After that, 2 or 3 years, TT&T is gone anyway. 43, where is a 43%? It's just a number, not a real money. Next is come to the ITV, and next come to the digital TV. At that time, they will back in the past, in the year of 2013, they have an auction for digital TV, and the government said they are really proud that they can make a money 50 billion more than the 2.1 auction for 3G or something like that. But 50 million, where is 50 million right now? Did they got the money? No. But you have to distinguish between government benefit and people benefit. Spectrum is for people benefit. Spectrum is not for government benefit. That's why I still insist many times that spectrum assignment is for public benefit. We no need to make money for the government. That is.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Okay, thank you. I think that is okay.
Actually, I have a question for Matt. Since you know that Thailand is using a lot of Facebook, maybe Paragon Mall is center of Facebook in the region where people use Facebook a lot. While Facebook has major pop in Singapore and Malaysia, what would it take for Facebook actually putting similar kind of pop like Singapore and Malaysia into Thailand, where we believe we have a more customer of Facebook than any of these two countries? Why is that not happening, and what does it take to make it happen?
I mean, that goes back to stuff we talked about earlier, right? Like if there is good carrier neutral facilities with a lot of interconnection and stable long-term kind of regulation that we can rely on, that makes a case to build something there. If those factors are not fulfilled, there doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, this is really what it boils down to. Some of the stuff just been talked about definitely does not help in this case.
The analogy against Singapore and Hong Kong is an interesting one. Because on the surface, you sort of simply go, well, this is a bigger country, there should be more marketplace. But what you have to remember about a Singapore or Hong Kong or a Frankfurt or a London or a LA or New York City or Miami is that these are places where there is no differentiation between an international circuit and a domestic circuit. That if I'm in Hong Kong or I'm in Frankfurt and I want to go to my next door building or I want to go to my next country or I want to hit an undersea cable and go halfway around the world, there isn't very much difference. The subtlety of buying undersea cable is literally a day's worth of paperwork, which is nearly automatically approved. Even in the US, if you want to buy a 10 gig, 100 gig circuit coming from London to New York City or from LA to Tokyo, the US side of that is a day's worth of paperwork, and you don't get denied. It's just, was it 127? I've forgotten. I think it's just a simple piece of paperwork. When you go to a country like Thailand, this changes instantaneously because there are certain carriers that have international licenses, and at one point there was only one carrier here. The price point changes dramatically. And by the way, you've mentioned this earlier, and it's really important to understand. If we were sitting here 10 years ago, I picked 10 years, but I think that's about right, our discussion point about communication in regards to Thailand to somewhere would have been Thailand through an undersea cable that would go to Hong Kong or to Singapore, and that would be the end of the international conversation as far as connectivity is concerned. That is not the case today. The cross-border connectivity with countries like Cambodia, with Myanmar, et cetera, is radically different than where it was 10 years ago. I picked 10, and I may be off by a few years. And yet, because of the licensing and this compartmentalization, you being Thailand, are still in a fundamentally different position than a Hong Kong and Singapore, than a Frankfurt and LA, or a Miami, or even a Sao Paulo, Brazil. This separation of international and national is just a detriment to building the type of interconnect world that is now required in a gateway country. I can't say gateway city at this point in time, because in fact, if you look at the geography of the surrounding countries and where the fiber has successfully passed across borders, it isn't in and out of one city. It is, in fact, quite spread out. And yet, if you try and do things inside Thailand, you miss out on this because of this regulatory separation. And this is a chicken and egg thing. Are there not enough or very, very few independent data centers, and there are definitely not enough carrier-neutral locations because of this regulatory world, or is it the other way around? In other words, I think that it's incumbent on breaking this regulatory malaise that you're in, and it will fundamentally change the way that networking can be done. Bringing content into the country, bringing independent data centers, bringing cross-border connectivity where, look, when you have content, I want to give the example that was discussed earlier. You talked about content being in Myanmar, and you have a population here watching that content. Well, this happens all the time in France and Germany, in Holland and Belgium, England and anywhere in Europe. But no one cares because it's one market. It has become very cost effective. You can't tell there's a border. You just cannot tell. Oh, I want to buy a circuit from Amsterdam to Paris. Oh, which actually has to go through Belgium. But you don't care. Just give me a circuit, right? I get it 24, 48 hours later. Worst case, I get it 17 days later. And so I have my next 100 gig circuit and I'm up and running between two cities in disparate countries. It is such a deregulated world that you can grow infrastructure quickly, efficiently. You can get rid of bottlenecks. Oh, I need another 100 gig between these two cities. Done. The marketplace has multiple players. The cost effectiveness has fundamentally changed. And there is not this myriad of paperwork or the inability to even do something. That's the thing that has to change. And if your play is enterprise with SUPERNAP versus carrier, that's great. But I wish you all the success, and I hope you have a lot of competitors, because if the regulatory world changed, the geography of where Thailand sits is perfect for all of these. I mean, Singapore's in the middle of, it's too far away from most of Southeast Asia. That should be enough to convince you that something should change. But clearly it hasn't, you know. But let me know when it does.
Thank you. I really like your comment direct on this, because I think that's a challenge where the Thai telecom community needs to address. And I think it's a very concrete answer from you guys that I think as all the ISPs here and the data center provider, I think we will have to try to meet those challenges, not in terms of just neutral data center, but also improve the cost structure for you guys to really bring your content here so that refresh cost lowers as well.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think this is a time to finish, and thank you for my panelists. It's a really get useful information and discussion on this one, and I need a big hand for my panelists, Matt, Martin, and Dr. Thank you. I think I have some souvenir on this one.
Thank you very much for our panelists and the moderator. And for the photo and gift session, may I invite Dr. Pochanan Ratanachaipan. She is an executive director of the BKNIX Foundation. Thank you very much.
Imagine what all the street food will do for your health.
Before we leave, can you show the QR code back again? I would like you guys to take a few minutes to fill out the survey, evaluation survey for this event, so that we can improve our event for next year. And another announcement is that we will have the BKNIX 48 meeting in Thailand during the 5th to 12th September 2019 in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So please save the date, BKNIX 48 in Chiang Mai, Thailand in September 5 to 12. Okay, and that's it for today. If you have registered for beer and cocktail this evening, it will start right after this at the Sky on 20 rooftop bar. It will be on the 26th floor of this hotel. And this reception is for those who pre-registered only. And we also have another event tomorrow. It's the Thai Knock event. So if you are interested, you can come tomorrow and contact the registration desk outside. If you want to come, it's also free and it is in this room. And so that's it. Thank you very much and see you at the reception. Thank you.